Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of The Jamie Hughes Show. My name as always is Jamie Hughes and welcome to day one of my 7 days of Halloween movies, and today I'm going to be giving you my review of VHS. Now if you want to keep up to date with all my latest movie news and reviews, then make sure you hit that subscribe button, and as always with my videos, this review may include spoilers, so you have now been warned. So I'm kicking things off with VHS. I've chosen this film because the very first time I saw this, I was blown away and I was really intrigued by this movie for just how different it was. Like, this movie came out in 2012 and just for its time, it just felt very different. It felt very new, and yeah, I was just really impressed that you could do something new with a horror film. So I really enjoyed this movie. As I say, it's probably one of my favourite horror movies. I mean, it's nothing really like overly special, but it's just the whole concept of it. It's just something different and I really enjoyed it. So the whole story of VHS is that these guys break into a house. They're looking for a specific VHS tape. It's not really said what it is. I think they make like some sort of joke that it's like this guy's porno stash or something, but they find this VHS tape. They find an old guy and he's dead. Or they think he's dead. Ooh. And they start watching these VHS tapes that are in his house because he's got like loads of them. And that's where this movie becomes really interesting, because you do have that overall story of, you know, these guys breaking into the house trying to find this VHS tape, but this movie is told then through a series of VHS tapes. And this is where this movie does get really interesting, because each one of these VHS tapes is essentially a 15-20 minute horror film, and they really nailed every genre of horror film that you could imagine in these small tapes. You know, there's something for everybody in there. You know, there's supernatural horror, there's old school slasher and thrasher horror, there's aliens in there, there's just something for everybody, and that's what I enjoyed about this movie so much. As I say, it's just those really cool concepts for different horror films that did make this film so interesting and intriguing for me. And as I say, I've said it quite a bit already in this review, but it just felt very fresh the first time I saw it, because it was kind of like you didn't really have a safety net, if that makes some sort of sense. Because, you know, when you're watching a horror film, you kind of know when the bad stuff is going to happen. But with this movie, because you're jumping into a small horror film, you go back to the main story, which is supposed to be your safety net, but, you know, stuff starts happening to those guys as well. So it was just a constant layer of fear all the way throughout this movie, because there was no point where you could feel safe. You could think, all right, I'm gonna have a break from the scares now. They were just constant. And as I said, with this story being told through separate VHS tapes and separate stories, you were just thrown back in to a new layer of fear straight away. And yeah, I just loved that whole concept and that idea of that you can tell a story within a load of different stories, and it was just really fresh and exciting. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not the biggest fan of all of the individual stories in this movie. There are definitely ones that are stronger than the other. My personal favourite is actually the last story that is told, which is 10/31/98, or the 31st of December, the 31st of October 1998, and it tells the story of these guys that go to a haunted house for Halloween, and it turns out to be an actual haunted house. It's just really cool and interesting. I say my least favourite is probably the one that features the aliens, just because I just didn't really find it that scary. But watching this film with friends, that's what makes this film so interesting and cool, is that everybody has their own personal fears, and this film really attacks those in a really cool way. Yeah, so what I'm basically trying to say is that this movie does have something for everybody. It's a really good mix of horror genres, and it's just a really cool, fun film. Like, it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's not trying to you know, bend the mind of horror. It's just a really nice film with a really cool concept, and I say there's some really great scares in there along the way. I say it's a really interesting story, and it's something different, which is why I wanted to kick off my Halloween week with this movie, because it's a nice mix of genres. There are 2 sequels to this movie. I've seen the second one, which is still okay. It still has decent quality short movies in there. There is a really, really out there one which takes place in Malaysia. There's also a third one which I've not seen, but apparently it's not great. But anyway, you know, for a really, you know, kind of under the radar movie like VHS, I really, really enjoyed it. If you guys have seen VHS, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments below. And as always, if you did enjoy this video, then why not give it a like, and why not subscribe, because you'll be helping you out massively. And I will see you guys tomorrow for another episode of the Jamie Hughes Show Halloween week. Ta-ra.